Hi folks, and welcome back to my World of Tanks replays with the mighty Jingles. As you can see, today we're in the garage with the T-150, one of the three Russian Tier 6 heavy tanks. So we'll just take a quick look at the tech tree and see where this fits in. Prior to patch 7.3 there was only one Russian heavy tank line, and the KV, just the plain old KV, not the KV-1, sat there at Tier 5. And the KV was a bit overpowered. I doubt you'll find anybody who will admit that that wasn't the case. What am I talking about? This is the internet. You'll find thousands of people who will deny that that was the case, but they're all wrong, because it was overpowered. This thing had very, very good armour for Tier 5. I mean, it was slow, but that was the only bad thing about it. It had the monstrous bridge turret that the KV-2 gets. It had the 152mm gun that the KV-2 gets. It also had the 107mm Zis gun that the T-150 now gets, and all of that on one tank. It was ridiculous. And in patch 7.3 it got the nerf that it badly needed, and became the KV-1. It lost the big turret, that went to the KV-2, along with the 152mm derp gun, and the 107mm gun went to the T-150, and that left the KV-1 feeling very sorry for itself sitting down there at Tier 5. It still had pretty good armour, but its selection of guns wasn't that good anymore. And of course, with the Tier 5 heavy tanks still being able to get into Tier 9 games prior to patch 7.5, driving a KV suddenly became, well, not as much fun as it used to be. But, you know, patch 7.5 is out now, matchmaking spread has reduced to 2 tiers, and the KV-1 only sees Tier 7 tanks, and the T-150, along with its stablemates the KV-1S and the KV-2, now only sees Tier 8 tanks at the worst. So how do they perform? Well, a lot better than they used to, I have to admit. But the T-150 itself, well, it has the most health of any of the Tier 6 heavy tanks, 880 hit points. Second place goes to the American M6, sitting there with its upgraded turret on 870 hit points. So it's close, but you know, first place is still first place. Third place goes to the KV-1S, and fourth place, of course, the French ARL-44. So it has the most health of any of the Tier 6 heavies, which is good. It is quite a heavy tank, 54.3 tons. In my configuration, can weigh up to 58.8 depending on what you fit on it, but it has a reasonably powerful engine. And again, looking back at the tech tree, you've got two Russian heavy tank lines, and you go down this heavy tank line, and this is the slower but more heavily armoured Russian heavy tank line, personified by things like, you know, the KV-3, the KV-4, the STI, and here the T-150. And then from Tier 6 on, really, down here, you have the lighter, faster, but less heavily armoured of the Russian heavy tanks, and that's certainly the case with the KV-1S and the IS, you know, compared to the T-150 and the KV-3. So that's where we stand. And so, slower, more heavily armoured. Well, yeah, I'm afraid so. And you really start to get the character of this particular line of the Russian heavy tanks, because, yeah, that engine isn't particularly weak, but it can only do 35 kilometers per hour at the best. You look at the KV-1S, which sits on the other side of the Tier 6 divide. This thing can do 43 kilometers per hour. This is a fast, heavy tank. T-150, definitely not a fast, heavy tank. And while you're grinding out the experience you need for the two engine upgrades, bear in mind that the stock engine is only 500 horsepower. The first engine is 560, which is still crap. And this thing really doesn't start to move until you unlock that third engine, and then suddenly you have a 700 horsepower engine. And while it's never going to be a fast tank, it's surprisingly mobile in a straight line. It certainly moves a lot faster than I expected it to, but the acceleration isn't great, and unfortunately that whole theme of being less mobile extends to the hull traverse. 18 degrees per second. Oh, that is bad. That is really, really slow. I mean, if you look at something else that is famous for not turning very well at all, like the T-28 prototype, that has an 18 degree traverse speed. Yep, I bought the T-28 prototype. More on that later. So yeah, something like that, which is just infamous for being slow to turn, actually has the same traverse speed as the T-150. So, you know, just to give you an idea of what we're talking about here. So it doesn't turn very well at all. Now, if you look at the turret traverse, that's pretty slow as well, 24 degrees per second. Ooh, this thing is going to give you severe problems if you get outflanked by medium tanks or light tanks, because you just ain't going to be able to turn that gun around fast enough to point at them, and they will rip you apart. You will die the death of 1,000 cuts as they pepper your sides and rear with shots until you basically just die, because you won't be able to shoot them. So you need to bear that in mind when you're driving this thing around. If there are lots of enemy light and medium tanks around and you don't know where any of them are, try not to go anywhere alone on this thing. View range is alright, 330 metres, yeah, not bad. Signal range, well, even with a fully upgraded radio, yep, it's that 10RK piece of shit again. 440 metre signal range. It's the curse of the Russian mid-tier tanks. They all have really bad signal range. However, let's have a look at the gun and the armour. And this is where things start to get interesting on the T-150. Essentially, it's just an up-armoured version of the KV. And that is certainly the case. It has better armour than a KV. It's 90mm at the front, 90 at the side, 75 at the rear. The upgraded turret is very, very good as well. 100 at the front, 100 at the side, 75 at the rear. Now the rear of the turret is bad news. Not only is it only 75mm thick, but look at the size of this rear entry hatch. Oh, that's just a huge weak spot on the back of the turret. So if you ever get around the back of a T-150, that's where you want to shoot him. You're going to wreck him if you manage to put shots through that. So T-150 drivers, try to avoid. Speaking of weak spots on the turret, well, yeah, this big old machine gun turret at the top here is a massive weak spot. And if you're very, very close range, say you're sitting on the side of, or getting around, it is a reasonably tall tank, and so you might find, depending on how close you get to a T-150, if you're in a medium or a light tank, you're not going to have the gun elevation to actually reach that turret at the top. So in that sort of case, your best bet is just putting shots through the sides. However, bear in mind the side is 90mm thick. The rear is always going to be your best bet on this thing, because 75mm is the back of the turret, and the turret has that massive old weak spot and that hatch at the back. From the front, it's a different matter. Now, sticking with the turret for the moment before we look at the hull, it's 100mm thick at the front, and the gun mantle, this is one of the first Russian tanks that, if you look at things like the T-34, where are we? Even the T-34-85, the medium tanks in particular have absolutely terrible gun mantles that really offer very little extra protection. It's just, the T-34, rubbish. T-34-85, no, hardly any extra protection there. It's almost as bad. You go to the heavy tanks, the KV-1S, the gun mantle isn't really that much thicker than the rest of the front of the turret, and it's pretty much the same problem on the IS as well. It's not that much extra protection. You get to the T-150 on the other hand, and that mantle is substantially thicker than the rest of the front of the turret, and it's the first of the Russian heavy tanks that does actually offer a bit more protection. However, don't get too carried away with that, because at the end of the day, your thickest turret armour is still only 100mm, even with that extra mantle over the front of it, and you're going to get tier 8s shooting back at you, and they will still be able to penetrate the front of the mantle if you give them half the chance. In fact, just put this into perspective, if you look at the German medium tanks, like the 3001H, the 3601H, the 3001P, and the bane of the German medium tanks is this short L56 88mm gun. And everybody always complains about this gun, saying it doesn't have enough penetration. Well, this thing has 132mm of penetration. 132mm. And your toughest frontal armour on this thing is 100mm. So, yeah, it does have good armour, but don't get too carried away. It's not that good. What is good about the armour on the front of this thing is the angling and the sloping. Now, you can get penetrated here at the sides of the gun mantle with relative ease, but it's a very narrow target to hit. And if somebody is aiming at this strip here on both sides of the mantle, and as I said, don't forget, there are going to be plenty of guns out there that can put shots right through your gun mantle anyway. But if somebody who maybe doesn't have such a high penetration gun and is aiming at this, there's a good chance it's going to miss and hit the turret sides. Well, they're not really the sides. The sides of the turret start here and go back, but this is technically the front of the turret, and it's 100mm thick, but it's not so much about the thickness as it's at the angle. Yep. Shot goes in, smacks that. Look at that angle. That is practically an automatic bounce zone. That is something like an 80-degree angle from the front, which turns that 100mm thickness into something like an effective thickness of 160mm. That's a well-armoured turret front from that perspective. Now, the hull is almost exactly the same layout as the front of the KV at Tier 5. It's just thicker armour. So you've kind of got the same problems. This sort of mid-glacis on the front. This bit here, very, very hard to penetrate. And not just because it's 90mm thick, but again, it looks like something like a 75-degree slope, and that effectively takes it from 90mm up to something like 150mm thick. And it's such an amazingly well-sloped angle that shots are just going to bounce off that. If you're looking at the front of a T-150, you never want to shoot this part here. I just never want to do it. It's guaranteed bounce city. Same as the KV, you want to be shooting at this part of the upper glacis here, because it's at a much flatter angle, and also it's covered in weak spots. You've got a weak spot there, you've got a particular weak spot here. The machine gun port is even weaker armour than the driver's view port. Be very, very careful if you're shooting at lower glacis, however, because this clamp of armour that basically sits over the weld actually provides an extra layer of armour over the top. But if you aim between these two, I don't know what they're called. You know, I spent 22 years in the Navy, and I used to use these things all the time, and I cannot remember what they're called. But if you aim between these two things, and I dare say somebody in the comments is going to remind me what they're called, that's a good place to shoot at the front of the T-150. It has a reasonable amount of slope on it, but it is weaker than the rest of the armour, and it isn't nearly as well sloped as this bit here. So that's the spot to aim for. If he's got that covered up, then shoot here. It's less sloping, more likely to penetrate, and it's covered in weak spots anyway. From the sides, well, shoot them pretty much anywhere you like. I mean, that's only 90mm thick, but it's a big square box. And if you have the penetration to get through 90mm, and let's face it, tier 6 and above, you probably will, yeah, you're going to penetrate a T-150 from the side most of the time. If you're shooting from the side, always aim for the hull, never the turret. The turret's 100mm thick, that's only 90. From the rear, doesn't really matter. 75mm thick there, 75mm thick there, but if you get the choice, back at the turret, because that big old hatch is a weak spot. And that's the armour. That leads us onto the gun. Now, the T-150 has a massive selection of guns, so we'll have a look at them in the tech tree. And here we go. The stock 76mm Zis 5 is absolutely appalling. It's so bad I'm not even going to look at the stats. It is an awesomely shit gun. However, let's look back up the tech tree. Now, you will have come to the T-150 from the KV-1, and the KV-1 gets a couple of guns that you can also use on the T-150. I mean, the stock gun on the KV-1 is exactly the same as the stock gun on the KV-1S, so we can completely ignore that. But there's this 57mm 413, which is effectively the same gun as the T-34's 57mm Zis 4. You can also use that on the T-150, and that ain't bad. It's alright at tier 5 on the KV-1, it's not great at tier 6 on the T-150, but you can use it, it ain't terrible. The other choice is, of course, the derp gun, the 122mm U11, tiny stubby little tube of a barrel on the front of the tank, and it's a derp gun. Horrible aim time, horrible accuracy, horrible reload, really horrible penetration, buttload of damage if it penetrates. Derp guns are derp guns. If you like using derp guns, by all means use that if you wish to grind out your experience. They're both available on the T-150. What unfortunately is not available on the T-150 is the 85mm F30 gun, which most people, this is the gun that they use on the KV-1. It's not available on the T-150, I'm afraid. So when you do come to the T-150, this is what you're looking at. Those are two of the guns available on the KV-1. These will both be unlocked. This 85mm S31, this is the first time you see it. It's also available on the KV-3, but that's tier 7. Now, you're going to have to use this gun to get the turret and the 107mm Zis 6. And that 107mm is the only gun you want to be using on the T-150. It's not a great gun, but it's not a bad gun either. Unfortunately, all the other guns are pretty crap on a tier 6 heavy. That is the gun you really need to be using on this tank. So to get to that gun, you're going to have to spend 4,350 XP on the S31 here. Now, to grind that one out, how you do it is up to you, but it's a horrible grind. It really is a nasty, nasty grind, because you're effectively using a couple of tier 5 heavy tank guns, or this piece of crap up here, to unlock this. But it's only 4,350. It should take you more than a day or two, even if you just play for your daily doubles. Well, it'll take you 2 or 3 days, even if you just play the daily doubles on this thing, and get a decent result. With that unlocked, things start to get a little bit better. It's still not a great gun, but it's good enough. and it is better than the 85mm gun on the KV1, which you unfortunately can't use on this. So we're looking at what, 11.8 rounds per minute. That's not bad. 119 penetration. Yeah, that's not bad. 160 average damage. Yeah, that's not bad. 0.42 accuracy. All right, that is pretty bad. Absolutely horrible aiming time. 3.4. But you know, if you can't get used to crappy aiming time and crappy accuracy, you're playing the wrong tank. The tanks of the wrong nation. This is what the Russian tanks are like. Using this gun makes it slightly less painful, and allows you to unlock the second turret, which you absolutely need on this thing, for nearly 4,000 XP. And then you can start grinding out the 14,400 experience you need. This is going to be a horrible grind. 14,400 experience for the ZIS-6 gun, and this is the gun that you need to be using on the T-150. Now, it's also available on the KV3, the KV2, the KV4, but this is the first time you're going to come across it here at Tier 6. So we're looking at 5.88 rounds per minute. It's kind of slow. Who am I kidding? It's very slow. It's not as slow as the 122mm gun on the KV1S, but it's still slow. It has good penetration though, 167mm. Again, not quite as good as the 122mm gun on the KV1S, but it's in the same ballpark. The damage is very good. You're going to be hearing this phrase a lot. Not quite as good as the 390 average damage on the KV1S's 122mm gun, but it's still pretty good. The accuracy is crap. This is not a sniping weapon. But, you know, Russian heavy tank guns, this is what they're like. And the aiming time of 3.4 seconds is as bad as the aiming time on the KV1S's 122mm gun. And I'm comparing it to the KV1S for a good reason, because what we have here is a gun that is only really better than the gun that you get on the KV1S, and that it fires about twice as fast. Penetration is about the same, damage is less, accuracy is more or less the same, aiming time is the same. The only real difference, well, two real differences, is it fires about twice as fast and it does 3/4 of the damage. So it's kind of like, to all intents and purposes, the same as the 122mm gun on the KV1S. It just makes up for not having the top end alpha damage by firing twice as fast. So technically the DPM on this thing is actually better than the DPM on the KV1S, and that kind of suits the tank, because whereas the KV1S isn't that well armoured, and it basically lives by rolling up the corners, poking its nose around, derping somebody in the face and then backing up while they reel in shock as they wonder where 2/3 of their health just went, because it doesn't really have the armour to exchange fire on a corner, so it has to survive that way. And the T-150, it does have the armour, so it can engage in sustained close range gunfights with this gun, and that's really what this gun is for, because with that terrible accuracy and terrible aiming time, this is not a long range sniping weapon. It looks like a long range sniping weapon, it's a great big long gun, but it really isn't. It's kind of like a sustained fire version of the KV1S's gun, and where the slow reload and the horrible accuracy and the horrible aiming time of the KV1S's gun work for the KV1S because of the way you play it, close range, rolling around corners and derping people in the face. You kind of have to use this tank the same way. You just have to expose yourself more often because this gun fires faster and doesn't do as much damage. But that's all right, because the T-150 has better armour than the KV1S. So, and that, you know, that kind of makes sense. It's still not great armour. It is only a Tier 6 heavy tank after all. But you can, you know, use the same old tricks that you use on every other tank in the game and angle your armour just to increase your chances of, you know, surviving when you poke your nose around that corner. And you will find the front of this thing is surprisingly bouncy. And your ideal angle is, you know, about 30, 35, maybe 40 degrees. Come rolling around a corner, that sort of angle, out you go, turn your turret, bang, roll back around the corner. And there's a fairly high chance, I mean, anything that hits this is probably going to bounce. But you've just increased the effective sloping of this vulnerable bit of the front plate up here and the vulnerable piece of the lower plate down there. Drastically increase the chance of a bounce and increase the thickness of the armour. You've also made these weak spots harder to hit by narrowing the amount of area that they are presented towards the target, and that's how you really want to be playing this thing. You certainly don't want to be stopping in the middle of open fields and taking long-range shots with that gun at targets that the guys further ahead of you have spotted, because they'll kill them before you've even aimed. 3.4 second aiming time, and you're a big old target sitting in the middle of a field, stationary. Oh, hi Artie, I was wondering when we'd meet you. So it's kind of like the KV-1S, and it really has to be played the same way. It's just not as fast as the KV-1S, but it does have better armour than the KV-1S, and the gun is kind of similar. It's certainly not the sort of gun you want to be taking pot shots at targets across the opposite end of the field at Malinovka with. It is just not what that gun is for. It doesn't have the accuracy, it doesn't have the aiming time. And sitting stationary for 3.4 seconds waiting for the sights to settle down is just inviting people to put shots through you in return. And that's just not how this tank works. So, let's have a look at modules. Well, horrible aiming time, horrible reload. You're going to want a gun rammer and an enhanced gun lane drive. If you're prepared to spend 1,000,000 credits, then those are the two that you're going to want. You might also like, if you're prepared to spend another 600,000 credits, improve ventilation, because that's going to improve everything. It's not just going to improve the reload time, it's not just going to improve the aiming time, it's going to improve your acceleration, it's going to improve the driver's ability to get the tank moving faster on soft ground, it's going to improve the traverse speed, everything. Improved ventilation is a very good idea on a tank like this, because it does have a lot of limitations. Crew skills, well, heavy tank, repairs. However, clutch braking, definitely want clutch braking on the driver. 18-degree traverse speed, you want clutch braking on the driver. Don't argue, just take it. And I've just gone with Mentor on the Commander, purely to get the repair skills up faster. So that's how I've set mine up. Let's have a look at a couple of games. So this was the very first game I played in the T-150 when I rebought it after patch 7.3. And this was an interesting game. I'm certainly not saying this is the way you should be playing the T-150. How I didn't die in this one, I have absolutely no idea. You'll see what I mean. So it's Redshire, it's a tier 7 game. It's not the worst matchmaking you can have, but you know, it's not the best either. It's an average game in the T-150. And there we can see, ooh, going up a hill you can't even get it at double figures. That 700 horsepower isn't quite enough to shift this tank at speed going uphill. However, as you can see, that once we get onto the flats and we start going down a slight dip in the ground, and we're already doing up to 24 kilometers per hour, and bang, there you go, there's the speed. And this thing does actually move surprisingly quickly for such a heavy tank. Now, watch this. So we've got KV-1S is charging off ahead. And a good hit on the ELC AMX there. And here's what I'm talking about. Small, light tanks like that, they get around you, you are screwed. Now here comes artillery. And while this is not the fastest tank in the world, and it turns really, really slowly, just watch. Watch how many times artillery fails to hit me in this game. And that KV-1S is charging off ahead. And there ain't no way I'm going to catch up with him. And what have we got behind us? Let's have a look. There's a Tiger, T-34-85, everybody else is camping the hill. So view ranges being what they are in a tier 7 game, I'm trying to stay as far over to the left as I can, so snipers in the hill up there aren't going to be able to see me. And our KV-1S has found all sorts of trouble. Look at this. He's going to die very, very quickly. And here's that aiming time. Whoa, actually, no, let's not hang around up there. I think that was the T-29 hit me. And that means I've been spotted by artillery again. And I start doing the old T-150 shuffle. And here it comes. That was an arty hit. Damaged my tracks. Well, it wasn't a direct hit, it was splash damage. It was very, very near miss. And look what we got in front of us. T-29, BDR, Tiger, KV-1, M18, and that's just the ones that we've seen. And And I admit, nobody else is in any hurry to come further forward. So what I'm now doing in a T-150 Tier 6 heavy tank is scouting. And doing a pretty damn good job of it too, if I do say so myself. Here they come. And he's almost certainly reloaded by now. And there's a tree falling over there, that means something else is coming up. It's probably the Tiger. There's the M6. Come on, Artie, where are you? And there's a tree falling again, so there's something else coming up over there. Oh, there's a KV-1 as well. I take 2 solid hits there. 3 solid hits just to kill that Hellcat. But I've spotted them all again. Artie kills their M6. There's the Tiger. KV-1's coming up. He's on 31%. Boom. Here comes the T-29. Now I need to be careful on that T-29. He does have the upgraded turret. And he does have very, very good gun depression. And here comes Artie again. And misses me again. And you do that T-150 shuffle, keep moving in unpredictable patterns. And we've just lost the T-34, 85, and I'm still the furthest one forward. Okay, that T-29 can wreck me with one hit. He's already done 345 damage to me. Possibly he did that 260 as well. Okay. I'm going to have to man up and go for it. I mean, we've got a 3601H coming up as well, but and the KV-13, but he doesn't seem to be... Oh, there's the T-29. Just need to keep him spotted. Come on, Artie, do your thing. And I'm asking Artie, are you ready for the T-29? He says, oh, wait. Oh, okay, but that KV-13 isn't going to wait. Looks like the M41 got another hit on the and there we go. SU-8 finishes him off. Now there's just a Tiger. Okay, time to go. KV-13 is very exposed now. He's taking shots from the hill as well. Lovely. Right at the weakest part of the Tiger's side arm. Can we reload in time to finish him off? I think we can. Oh yeah! But if I'm shooting at him, then Artie know where I am. Luckily, Artie went for the KV-13 instead, and now I'm going downhill. I can get up to them. There they go. There they go. They're both of them trying to kill me yet again. But I managed to pick up a good bit of speed going down that hill. And the guys behind us are starting to move up. As you know, there's nothing else to be afraid of. We've killed everything down here. They only have 4 tanks and 2 artillery left. They have a T-150. He's on the other side of the hill. Not my problem. And there, as you can see, yeah, this tank is surprisingly mobile for, well, in a straight line. Surprisingly mobile for such a big, heavy tank. But again, even going up a slight rise like that, you slow right down to 20, 18 kilometers per hour. Now, I'm not amazingly keen on moving any further forward than this because I know there's going to be tank destroyers on that hill. And going down that road is going to mean exposing my flank to them, and I only had 87 health. So, this Tiger's not looking too clever either, but I don't want to go down this road alone. So I'm keeping an eye on where the cover is, trying to make sure these guys can't spot me. And I'm going to wait for that VK3601H up there. He's tucked in behind that rock. I'm going to wait for him to spot. I think I've done my job, scouting in a T-150. Somebody else's turn. Okay, there's one of their tank destroyers. My radio range isn't good enough for me to be able to tell what it is from here. Looks like a Yak Panther. He's just killed a T1 Heavy. There's their ARL. aim, and you aim, and you aim. Oh, we hit him. Hooray. Okay. It's one less problem, but there's a good chance I've been spotted because I fired, and they still have 2 artillery in the game. Our Hellcat takes out the Jagdpanther. There's one of them, and I don't have a shot at him, but there's the T-25/2, and yeah, they're like a 3.4 second aim time. And that one surprisingly went right exactly at where we aimed. Lost sight of him, so I raised my sights on fire, but I haven't noticed that the M41 has in fact killed him. Now all they have left is their Hummel. So yeah, hooray. 3 kills. First game in the T-150 since I sold it just after patch 7.3. And a very unusual game in the T-150. I mean, you don't scout in T-150s. It's just not done. And I don't really have a clear shot at this Hummel. And that one goes wide because, you know, 0.45 accuracy, you've got to expect that with this gun. He gets killed before I can reload. So there you go. Not a bad game. And that was the first game that I played in the T-150 after selling it months and months and months back, following the release of patch 7.3 when the T-150 was introduced to the game. How did we do? Oh, actually, you know what? I could have sworn that was my first game, but it can't have been because that's not doubled. So I must have played a game prior to that. But look at that, 1,500 experience, 42,000 credits. We killed a Tiger, a KV-1 and a Hellcat. You know, I don't remember killing the KV-1. No. Well, I'm not going to argue with it. Hooray, 3 kills. We damaged T-25/2, that ELC AMX, we nearly killed him. Managed to get a shot into Casimir here in his ARL V39 and detected. That never happens in a T-150. So yeah, good result. 9 shots fired, 7 at the target. We took 5 hits. A couple of bounces, 3 that actually did damage. Big nasty hit there from the T-29. Not a bad result. Can't really argue with that. 1,500 credits is, you know, that's I'll take that on any tank, let alone a tier 6 heavy. But that ain't all. Yeah, got more replays. Let's have a look at some others. So, different kind of game. Here we are on Red Shy. No, we're not on Red Shy. What am I talking about? Here we are on Erlenberg. It's an assault map, and we're on the attacking team. Tier 6 heavy tank and a tier 8 game. And there's a lot of tier 7s here as well. So we're firmly down in the lower half of the league table here. Now, this is not really the kind of environment that is very good for a T-150. And I say that because in a wide open map like large areas of Erlenberg are, what you tend to find happens is you're driving this tank around and, you know, it's not that slow, but on the straight you're usually lucky to get over 30 kilometers per hour, and there's lots of other tanks on the team that are much faster than you, like that KV-1S, T-3485, you know, M5, and so on and so on. So they get up ahead before you do, and they spot targets. And you tend to find yourself going, oh, target. And so naturally you stop, turn your turret, turn your turret, turn your turret. You start aiming. You wait, you wait, you wait. You're aimed, and somebody else kills him. Or by then, he's disappeared, or he's moved behind cover. And you've just spent 3.4 seconds sitting in the open, aiming at a tank that you were never going to hit with 0.45 accuracy at that sort of range anyway. And you have to cultivate a certain sense of discipline when you're driving this tank, and try to play it like a KV-1S, except you're not as fast as a KV-1S and you can't get forward to close combat range as quickly as a KV-1S can. But close combat range is where this tank does best, because the gun is broadly similar to the KV-1S's 122mm. It just doesn't have the alpha damage. Look how long it takes to aim. And by some miracle we actually hit him. So when you're driving a T-150, you really, really need to have the self-discipline to not stop and take pot shots at targets 250, 300 metres away, because they're probably either going to be dead, have moved, disappear, or you're just going to miss anyway. you need to keep going. Exploit what cover is available. Keep yourself safe from return fire until you can get close. Because that's where this tank is very, very good. Now people say, why aren't you aiming for the weak spot? Are you kidding? Look at that. Trying to aim for the commander's hatch of a Tiger 300 meters away? Forget it. In fact, here we go. Let's aim for the commander's hatch. No, this gun just isn't going to hit. It's as simple as that. Driving a T-150, you need to stop pussying around 300 meters away from enemy tanks and close the distance. Obviously when it's safe to do so. Oh, we took a bounce there. Now, stop. That was a VK3001H with his 132mm penetration gun, but remember what I was talking about? That sloped side of the turret? Yeah, you know, he was probably aiming for the gun mantle, and that just smacked. And that is never going to penetrate. Not at that angle. That is a guaranteed bounce. You also have very, very poor gun depression in this thing. And that could be a problem when you're coming over a rise. And there we go. Fired, didn't wait for it to aim. That shot nowhere near where we were aiming. Now, 3001H. And he has the 88mm gun. Just by the amount of damage he just did. And he puts one shot into us which penetrates. His second shot misses, hits our tracks. Let's have a look. Where did that shot go through? There you go. That's where you're going to get penetrated time and time again in the T-150. Even though we angled it, it's only 90mm thick. The slope isn't as good as the lower upper glacis. And his gun does have 132mm of penetration.
We fixed the track.
Track's back up, let's go. Still got a Tiger in front of us. Now we're getting to, and here, even though we are aiming for his weak spot at 58 meters, you still miss. That's what this gun is like. Finally. Okay. So there we go, 2 kills. We've only really taken 1 hit so far. Some minor track damage, and whoa, somebody just put a good hit in that KV-1S from the flank. Don't know what it was. Now he's dead. There's a KV-1S over there. Wait for it, aim, aim, aim. Don't push the shot. And you were rewarded with your 3rd kill. So what else is out there? There's an IS-3 over in the town, but he has other problems. And our Type 59, just watch this, Type 59, complaining that we're a shit team. You really, really cannot afford to be firing this gun at that sort of range without waiting for it to be fully aimed. And if you do,
Enemy vehicle destroyed.
you get rewarded with your 4th kill. Let's close in and finish off that IS-3, although, ooh, looks like he's pointing his gun at us. And it's a complete waste of time shooting at an IS-3 at this range with this gun, because you need to get close and make sure you hit his weak spots. 160mm penetration isn't bad, but you need to hit weak spots if you're shooting at an IS-3. And here we go, that mobility. On the flat, this thing is a surprisingly mobile tank.
Penetration.
Reasonable amount of damage. Try to angle.
We've lost a track.
IS-3 is going to penetrate us anyway. But we can reload much faster than the KV-1S.
Penetration.
Get another shot into him. Prevent him from escaping. Our Tiger 2 kills him. Now I do keep complaining about the aiming time on this gun. And it is going to give you problems like this. Going for a 5th kill. And artillery fires before we do. Although I think we hit him. And then the Tiger 2 finished him off. So yeah, winning 13-8, and we're capping. So I couldn't resist replying to our pessimist Type 59 driver And that was a good result. Tier 6 heavy tank, the Tier 8 game. We got 4 kills, nearly got 5. A comfortable win. So, how did we do personally? Well, 14 shots fired, 9 hit the target. This is not a sniping weapon. You need to be close, or lucky, or give that gun time for the sights to settle on the target. And it does take 3.4 seconds without a gun lane drive. But we took 5 hits. Okay, 3 of them did damage. We managed to get 2 bounces, which ain't bad in a Tier 8 game. And 4 good kills. Damaged 2 tanks. And these guys are all the same or higher tier than us. And so, yep, that's another 1500 XP. Doubled, 3,170. 38,000 credits. Decent amount of cash. No Battle Hero awards. So, yeah, that's the T-150. I do kind of like this tank. I'm not sure I'm going to like... Well, I'm not sure I'll like it enough to keep it, however. I do like the KV-1S a lot. I'm probably going to keep the KV-1S. It's just... It's not really a heavy tank. It's a medium tank with a really big gun. And I like my medium tanks. And so for me, the KV-1S is more fun to play. But the T-150 is by no means a bad tank. I have had fun driving the T-150. However, I've just bought myself a T-28 prototype. In a week or so, I'm going to need to buy myself an IS-7. So I'm probably going to sell the T-150 just to fund the purchase of new tanks like my IS-7, my M103, yeah, things like that, and get more reviews up for you guys. And maybe buy some of the mid-tier tanks that I've skipped, like the 3001H, 3001P, and so on and so forth. So that was the T-150. I hope you enjoyed the review, perhaps learned something. So until next time, catch you on the battlefield, and take care out there.